Welcome back. So as you remember last time, Jack was just writing a letter home to his Aunt Arabella and his sisters. And the last thing that he said at the end of his letter was, "I must stop now as I just heard someone call, 'Ship ahoy!' Maybe it's the Sea Raven." And a few of you were asking, what's the Sea Raven? Remember, the Sea Raven is the name of the boat that they're racing. And why are they racing? Someone started a contest that basically said between these two boats, whichever one of you gets to California first gets to get a brand new boat. So that's why Captain Swain really wants to beat the Sea Raven. And what do we know about the Sea Raven? It's a similar boat as the Lady Wilma, but in the bottom of the Sea Raven is carrying really lightweight things like bedding and sheets. And the Lady Wilma is carrying coal and wood for people who are building houses in California. So it's much heavier in the water, and you can imagine that that would make it not go as fast. So that's another thing that has Captain Swain kind of upset. All right, here we go. When Jack looked up, the captain was standing on the paddle box, squinting at a distant ship through his brass long glass. "Blast!" he scowled. "She's not the Sea Raven, mates. She's a square rigger. Becalmed, no doubt. There's not enough breeze in these latitudes to snuff out a candle." It was almost 2 hours before the two ships came within hailing distance. Praiseworthy finished his 50 laps around deck, and Jack locked good luck in his pen. But 10 minutes later, the porker was at Jack's heels again. Captain Swain got out his silver speaking tube and shouted across the water. With all her sails hanging like great curtains, the square rigger seemed to Jack like some giant of the seas. "Ahoy! Ahoy!" answered the master of the square rigger. "Have you seen the Sea Raven, sir?" "Aye, Captain. She came steaming by a day ago." Uh-oh. Captain Swain lowered the speaking tube from his lips long enough to say, "Blast!" The voice from the square rigger floated across again. "Can you give us a tow, Captain?" "What's that?" "I've been becalmed for a week. We're 36 days out of New Orleans and bound for California. Fever has broken out below decks, sir. The Sea Raven turned her back on us. I beg you, sir, give us a tow until we can catch a wind to make port." All right, we're going to have to stop and talk about this a little bit. So the other ship is saying they are becalmed. And what that means is that it's a sailing ship that has sails. And being becalmed means that you're somewhere in the ocean where there's no wind, just because of weather. And if the only way you have to move forward is wind energy, and it's not a windy day, then you are stuck in one spot. And it sounds like that's the problem of this ship. And it's not just that they're waiting there, it's that people are sick below deck and they need to get to land to get doctor's helps. And what this other ship is saying is that the Sea Raven came by the day before and turned her back on them, meaning that she just kept on sailing by. She didn't help. So we know that the Sea Raven is now ahead of them, and we have this other ship that's asking for help. They want to be towed. So they want to throw out some rope to the other ship, and then the Lady Wilma would have to pull them. So you can imagine how fast you would go if you were pulling another boat. Not very fast. Jack, standing on a capstan, could tell that Captain Swain was about to order full speed ahead. But now he could be seen pacing back and forth on the paddle box, growling and grumbling to himself. Under the tropical sun, the brass buttons on his coat glowed like lumps of fire. Towing the square rigger would slow the Lady Wilma to a crawl. Praiseworthy, too, under his black umbrella, watched the captain. Every gold seeker aboard seemed to be holding his breath, waiting for Captain Swain to make his decision. To come to the aid of the square rigger could very well mean that the Lady Wilma would be put out of the race. She might never catch up with the sea raven. Captain Swain rubbed his plump nose. He cocked an eye at the sailing ship with her canvas hanging dead from the yards. Then he raised his speaking tube to his lips and shouted, I'm going to pause there. What do you think Captain Swain's going to do? We have to think, not what would you do, but with this character, Captain Swain, what would make sense that he would do? Is he a character that's nice? Is there any evidence that he is compassionate and thinks about others? Or does he come across as kind of selfish and only wanting to do his own thing? So try to think about how he treated Jack and Praiseworthy when he found out they were stowaways. Yep, even though he was yelling and stuff, he actually sort of helped them. I mean, he made them go work in the feeding coal to the engine, but he could have made them walk the plank. He could have made them do a lot of other things. So he actually seems like a pretty good guy. So let's see what he's going to say. Captain Swain shouted, "Glad to help, sir. We'll throw you a line." There came a wild shouting from the rails of the square rigger, where passengers and crew tossed hats in the air. Jack couldn't help being swept up in their joy and relief, and he told himself that the Lady Wilma might yet get back in the race. If Captain Swain didn't think of something, who do you think would? Praiseworthy would. Within the hour, the side wheeler was in harness like a sturdy ox, pulling her burden across the equator. The Great Southern Cross rose higher in the heavens. Jack's education proceeded, without books. Praiseworthy borrowed Captain Swain's brass long glass, and at night, the sky became their textbook. They examined strange constellations and star clouds. It was a glittering landscape. "Praiseworthy," said Jack, "was my father anything like you? I mean, nothing like me, Master Jack." They were silent for a moment. There were times when Jack felt a great emptiness, a loneliness that not even Aunt Arabella could take away. Even if they should find no gold in California, he was glad to be traveling with Praiseworthy, to be sharing adventures and even misfortunes. "Were you always a butler?" he asked. "Always." Jack brushed the hair out of his eyes. "I mean, if you weren't a butler, you wouldn't have to call me Master Jack, as if we're at home. We're partners. You could just call me Jack, plain Jack." "Oh, I couldn't do that. It wouldn't be proper." "No, indeed. But I'd like it just fine." "You mustn't forget my position, Master Jack." "But if we strike it rich, you won't have to be a butler anymore." "Oh, I shouldn't like to be anything but a butler. Not for a moment. I was born to my calling like my father before me and his father before him. It will please me to go on serving your Aunt Arabella. Look there, Master Jack. I believe that is the constellation of the Whale. Fine sight, isn't it?" The two gold ships, linked together like sausages, went lumbering through the sea. On the 5th day, a puff of wind began to tug at the square rigger's jibs. And then, one after the other, the topsails, the royals, and the mainsails swelled out like great white clouds. "By grab, she's caught a wind!" roared Captain Swain, leaning out of the pilot house window. With a general shout, the square rigger threw off the tow lines, and the two ships parted. There was a final exchange of good wishes. Then the Lady Wilma kicked up her paddle wheels, relieved of her burden, and sprinted forward. She was back in the race. And the next chapter, which I will read part of, is called The Pig Hunt. Chapter 4. And here's a picture. Jack began to dread Sunday dinners. It was bound to be good luck's turn on the menu soon. The pig no longer came trotting after him. It was true. for Jack had tied up the pen to make it escape-proof. But the porker remained on his mind, if not at his heels. And then, with Rio de Janeiro only a few days away, Jack saw the cook leave the galley with a heavy meat cleaver in his hand. What in the world is a meat cleaver, and why would that make Jack nervous? It's a big old knife. Good grief, thought Jack. He's going for good luck. Without a second thought, Jack went sliding down the nearest ladder. When the cook arrived at the animal pens, the porker was gone, and so was Jack. "It's that boy," he shouted, waving the meat cleaver. "Pigs is for eating, not for pets." Soon, even the gold seekers joined in the pig hunt, for the promise of fresh pork made their mouths water. They looked above decks and below decks. They glanced up masts. The cook himself went searching through the cargo hold, where Monsieur Gaunt, a Frenchman, in the rough homespuns of a farmer, was watering his precious grape cuttings. "Have you seen a pig down here?" growled the cook. "No, monsieur," answered the Frenchman, "but rats? Oui." The chase continued. The pig hunters looked everywhere but the captain's stateroom, which was fortunate, for Jack and Good Luck were hiding behind the open door. "Not a sound out of you," Jack whispered. The pig, snorting out of sheer love, rubbed her ever-fattening side against Jack's leg. "Shh!" Just then, the captain himself could be heard approaching along the passageway. But when he entered his cabin, there was no sign of the pig or boy. He hung up his blue cap, yawned, and took a nap. And we're going to stop right there. See you next time.